I spent my retirement savings helping raise my grandson while my daughter and her husband built their dream life. Then one day he said, "You're too old to be around him. We want young energy." They filed a restraining order and told everyone I was losing my mind. I stayed silent until the day I showed the judge what I found in there. My name is Eleanor. I'm 68 years old. I live alone now in Burbank, California, in the same small house I bought in my early 40s. I used to feel proud of that house. It was nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, worn carpet, popcorn ceilings, but I paid for it myself working at a dental office for over 30 years. That home saw birthday parties, late-night tears, homework battles, and years of sacrifice. Especially after my husband left. He walked out when my daughter Celeste was 5. Just didn't come home one night. Left a note saying, "I'm not built for this." That was it. Never saw him again. I worked full-time, sometimes took on weekend shifts, packed lunches every morning, stayed up grading homework I didn't understand just to be involved. Also, she'd have a better life than I did. And for a while, I thought she would. Celeste was smart. Kind. Loved animals. Got her degree in education and started teaching kindergarten. She met Trevor when she was 25. He was a smooth talker, the kind of guy who smiles wide but never shows his teeth. He wore a blazer to a barbecue. That should have told me something right there. But she was in love. And I stayed quiet. They married the next year. I paid for the flowers and the cake. I gave her my mother's necklace to wear. Trevor hugged me and called me Mom, in front of everyone. Said he was lucky to have 2 amazing women in his life now. He laid it on thick. 2 years later, Celeste got pregnant. She told me over lunch at Olive Garden. She was glowing. Trevor acted excited but immediately shifted the talk to how much daycare costs, how hard it'd be for Celeste to take too much time off work. I didn't like the way he made her feel guilty for being pregnant, but again, I didn't say anything. They asked me to help. Just for a little while, Celeste said. 6 months max. She said they couldn't trust strangers with their baby. Trevor said it'd save them thousands. I should have said no. But I didn't. I retired early. Cashed out some of my retirement savings. It cost me a penalty, but I didn't care. Lucas, my grandson, was born a month later. And from the second I held him, I knew I'd made the right choice. I was there for every milestone. I rocked him to sleep every afternoon. I kissed his scraped knees. I sang lullabies every night when Celeste and Trevor had to work late. 6 months turned into a year. Then 2. Then 5. They didn't ask anymore. They expected it. I was there every morning by 7 a.m. Sometimes earlier. They dropped him on my doorstep like I was a daycare they didn't have to pay. No thank yous. No small gifts. Sometimes not even a call on Mother's Day. But I didn't complain. I kept telling myself, they're just busy. They're stressed. They'll come around. They didn't. Instead, they bought a new car. Then a newer one. Then a house in Studio City. A big one. With granite counters and 3 bathrooms. I remember the day I went over to help them move and heard Trevor say to a friend, "We finally made it. This is the dream." They offered me a drink. That was it. No invite to stay. No mention of setting up a room for Lucas to spend time with me. They hired a nanny. To give me a break. But it wasn't a break. It was a phase out. First, they cut me to 2 days a week. Then once a week. Then not at all. No explanation. No warning. Just silence. I dropped off a birthday card for Lucas, nothing back. I texted Celeste to check in, left unread. I told myself maybe they were busy. Maybe something was wrong. Then one morning, I opened my front door and saw 2 men in dark shirts holding a large envelope. "You Eleanor Jennings?" one asked. I said yes. "You've been served." Inside was a restraining order. They claimed I was unstable. They said I was creating confusion for Lucas. They told the court I was delusional, threatening, and obsessed with control. I stood on my porch reading it in shock, my hands shaking. They said I wasn't allowed within 100 feet of their home or Lucas's school. Celeste didn't even call to explain. I tried to talk to her. I drove to their house. Trevor came outside and told me I wasn't welcome. "We want Lucas around younger energy," he said. "You bring too much heaviness." He actually said that. Too much heaviness. I told him I didn't understand. He smiled and said, "You don't need to." Then he shut the door. The next few weeks were hell. I stopped going to church. I didn't answer my phone. People around town started treating me different, cold. A few even avoided me. Turns out Celeste and Trevor told people I'd started having memory problems. They said I showed up at their house unannounced, said inappropriate things to Lucas, and even tried to take him. None of that was true. But lies travel fast. Especially when told with polished voices and sympathetic expressions. I felt like I was losing my mind. One night, I nearly drove my car off the road. I didn't want to feel that pain anymore. I thought maybe they were right. Maybe I'd imagined everything. Maybe I'd made up the bond one had with Lucas. But then I remembered the scrapbook. I went into my closet and pulled out the binder I'd been adding to for 6 years. Photos. Drawings Lucas made. Notes from Celeste asking me to pick him up, watch him longer, give him medicine. All in her handwriting. All proof I'd been there. That binder saved my life. And it gave me purpose. A few weeks later, I remembered the old house. The one they lived in before the Studio City place. It had been sold, but I still had the key. They never changed the locks. One morning, I drove over there and parked across the street. The place looked abandoned. I waited a while. No one came. I opened the garage. It smelled like paint and old boxes. Dust everywhere. Then I saw the box labeled Taxes T. It was under a folding table, half covered by a tarp. I don't know why, but I opened it. And what I found changed everything. I sat cross-legged on the cold concrete floor of that garage, heart pounding, flipping through papers I knew I wasn't supposed to see. Trevor's box wasn't just old tax returns. It was a record of something much darker. At first, it looked like harmless business stuff, client invoices, spreadsheets, W-2s. But then I saw a folder labeled Private Not for Review. Inside were files with the name Lonarco Pharmaceuticals. That caught my attention. Trevor always told us he worked in tech. Specifically, digital marketing for startups. Nothing about pharma. There were invoices for consulting services, each one marked with large sums, $17, $400, $32,000, $25,750. All charged monthly. The P's were names I didn't recognize. Clearstone Strategy LLC, Garnet Signal, TT and Company. I looked up a few names later. They weren't real companies. The addresses were P.O. boxes or strip mall UPS stores. Then I saw an envelope tucked into a manila folder. It had Trevor's name on it. Inside were two things, a note that said, Split as discussed. Cayman wire complete, confirm on your end. A printed account statement showing a foreign bank account with over $480,000. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Trevor was laundering money. And he'd been doing it a while. I found more PDF printouts of education grants. One form had Celeste's name typed under Program Supervisor. It was a grant for a literacy program targeting underserved kids. But the program name didn't match any school I knew. There were funds listed, $95,000 from the state, transferred to a K Learning Enrichment Fund. I later found out that account was tied to a company under Trevor's name. They were stealing grant money. State money. Taxpayer money. And they had the nerve to call me unstable? I took pictures of everything. Dozens of them. Then I drove home, shaking. That night I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours. I could have taken that info straight to the police. But I didn't. Not yet. They'd already smeared my name. They'd already convinced my neighbors, friends, even church people, that I was losing it. If I marched in with this out of nowhere, they'd say I faked it. Or stole it. Or worse. I needed to be smart. So I waited. Over the next month, I started documenting everything. I found old texts from Celeste asking me to buy diapers, to stay late because they had meetings. I printed every one. I pulled my old bank statements and highlighted transfers I made for Lucas, school clothes, toys, dentist bills. I made a binder with tabs. I even recorded a voicemail Trevor left me a year earlier, telling me Lucas only trusts you. And that we don't know what we'd do without you. That recording would matter later. Then I did something I wasn't proud of. I contacted the new nanny. Her name was Sam. She was young, probably late 20s. She followed me back once on Instagram when I liked a post of Lucas's birthday party. I messaged her. I said, "Hey, I'm Lucas's grandma. I miss him a lot. I know things have gotten messy. I'm not asking for anything, just wondering how he's doing." To my surprise, she replied. She told me he was confused. That he asked where I was all the time. That they told him I was in a hospital, getting better. She said he cried when he didn't get my birthday card last year. He never got it. They threw it away. She didn't say much else. I could tell she was nervous. Probably scared to lose her job. But that was enough. A week later, something happened that changed everything again. I was at the grocery store when a man in a gray hoodie came up to me in the parking lot. Late 30s. Thin. Nervous. "You're Trevor's mother-in-law, right?" I paused. "Who's asking?" He looked around. "Name's Phil. I used to work with him." I heard what happened. I stepped back. "How did you know who I was?" He glanced at his phone. "I saw a picture of you once. I recognized you from Lucas's birthday party. Look, I don't want anything. But I think you should know, Trevor's in deep. He's not just messing with company money. He's screwing over people. Good people." I asked him what he meant. Phil said Trevor had offered him a side project to funnel money through a fake marketing business. At first, it was small amounts. But then big money started moving. Phil got scared and backed out. Trevor threatened him, said he'd sue him for breach of contract. Said he'd make sure no one in this town ever hires you again. "He told me you were crazy," Phil said. "That you were stalking the family. But then I saw him yelling at your daughter on the phone about some missing files. That's when I realized he's hiding something." Phil handed me a burner phone number. "If you ever go to the cops, call me first. I'll talk." Then he walked off. My hands were shaking again. The walls were closing in on Trevor, and he didn't even know it. But I wasn't done yet. After Phil walked away that day, I sat in my car for over an hour. I kept staring at the burner number he gave me. Everything in me wanted to call the police right then. But something held me back. Not fear. Not doubt. Strategy. If Trevor had really been threatening people, laundering money, lying on state forms, and using his own son to make himself look like a picture-perfect father, then a tip to the police wouldn't be enough. No, I needed to make sure when he went down, he really went down. And Celeste too, if she was in on it. Not just a slap on the wrist. I wanted them exposed in a courtroom, in front of the same judge who granted them that restraining order. In front of the same neighbors who turned their backs on me. I wanted them to answer for what they did, publicly. So I started digging deeper. I filed a Freedom of Information Act request on the education grant Trevor had forged under Celeste's name. It took a couple weeks, but the documents arrived in the mail. It included the full application, signatures, business names, bank routing numbers, everything. Celeste had submitted it online using her work email. Her digital signature was on it. The money had been wired to a bank in Nevada under K Learning Enrichment Fund, which, I later confirmed, had 0 employees and no listed location. I even found the EIN, employer ID number, registered to Trevor 2 months before they moved into the new house. There it was. Proof. She knew. She wasn't just going along with it, she was a part of it. And yet she had looked me in the eye and told people I was losing my mind. That I was dangerous. I started going to therapy around that time. I hadn't told anyone about it, but I needed a paper trail that proved I was mentally sound. I told my therapist everything. She believed me. Wrote a letter after 3 sessions saying I showed no signs of delusion, paranoia, or psychosis. Said I was coherent, emotionally stable, and had full memory awareness. That letter would become important. Then I did something that took everything in me. I filed to contest the restraining order. The hearing date was set for 4 weeks later. I knew they'd be ready. Probably had a whole folder of lies prepared. But I was ready too. About a week before the hearing, I got a voicemail from someone I didn't expect. Sam. The nanny. Her voice was shaking. "Hi, Miss Eleanor, I really don't know if I should be calling you, but something happened tonight. Lucas got upset, really upset, and blurted out something. I think you need to know." I called her back immediately. She told me Lucas had cried during bedtime and said, "I wish I lived with Nana. Daddy said she's in the hospital, but I know he's lying." Then she paused. "There's more," she said. "I was putting away laundry and found a folder in the back of a closet. Trevor's closet. It had papers, bank things. Cayman Islands. Fake business names. I didn't take anything, but I snapped a photo of the folder. I also took a picture of one page. If you ever need it, I'll send it." I told her not to send anything by text. Instead, we met the next morning at a bakery on the edge of town. She came alone. No makeup, sunglasses on, clearly shaken. She handed me an envelope with 2 printed photos. The first was a folder labeled Barnett Backup Docs, Destroy. The second was a statement from a Cayman account with over $600,000. "Why are you helping me?" I asked her. She hesitated, then said quietly, Because Lucas loves you. And this, all of this? It's evil. They lied to that little boy. And they're using him. I hugged her. I felt her shoulders shaking as she whispered, I'm scared of him. She meant Trevor. Then came the final twist before the hearing. I got a letter in the mail. Not typed. Handwritten. From Celeste. It said, Mom, I don't know what to say anymore. I miss you. I didn't want it to be like this. But Trevor said if we didn't cut you off, he'd lose everything. He told me you were trying to ruin his business. That you were bitter and wanted custody. I believed him. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. He doesn't know I'm writing this. I think he's hiding more than even I know. If anything happens to me, please protect Lucas. I'm sorry, Mom. Love, Celeste. I read that letter 10 times. It wasn't enough to erase what she did. But it was something. Maybe the first crack in the wall she helped build. I made a copy. Filed it with the rest. And when the court date came, I didn't flinch walking into that courtroom. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and nerves. I sat alone on one side of the courtroom. Celeste and Trevor sat on the other. He wore a navy blazer, expensive looking. She looked smaller than I remembered, like she hadn't been sleeping. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Trevor smiled at me like this was a game. Like he'd already won. The judge walked in. An older woman with tired eyes. She scanned the room, shuffled some papers, and called the case. Jennings versus Jennings, protective order hearing. Trevor's lawyer went first. He painted a picture of an elderly woman in decline. Said I was emotionally unstable, unpredictable, and a threat to the child's safety. He claimed I showed up at their house uninvited, that I confused Lucas, made inappropriate comments, and even threatened to take him. None of it was true. But I let him talk. I let the lies spill. Then it was my turn. I stood up and handed the judge my binder. I'd labeled everything. Chronological. Color-coded. Text messages from Celeste asking me to take Lucas to doctor visits. Photos of me at his birthdays, every single one for 6 years. Receipts for toys, groceries, clothes I bought. A voicemail from Trevor, thanking me for being Lucas's rock. A notarized letter from my therapist, confirming my mental health. The photos from the garage, fake companies, foreign accounts, signatures. A copy of the FOIA grant request with Celeste's signature. Photos from the nanny. Celeste's handwritten letter. The judge sat back. She looked at Trevor. Then back at me. Do you have any explanation for these documents, Mr. Jennings? She asked. Trevor leaned forward. Your Honor, none of that proves anything illegal. And that letter, my wife didn't authorize. Celeste stood up. I did, she said quietly. Everyone turned to her. Trevor hissed. Sit down. But she didn't. She looked at the judge. He lied. About everything. About my mom. About the money. He told me if I didn't go along with the restraining order, he'd make it look like my mother was trying to steal Lucas. He said he'd have her committed. The judge stared at Trevor. Is that true? He didn't speak. Celeste continued. He forged my name on half those documents. The grant, the business forms, I didn't even see them until my mom showed me copies. I was scared. I thought I had no choice. Trevor's lawyer asked for a recess. The judge denied it. I've heard enough, she said. The restraining order is revoked immediately. Furthermore, based on what's presented here, I'm ordering an immediate investigation into Mr. Jennings' business dealings, financial records, and tax history. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Jennings into holding for questioning. Trevor's mouth dropped. Wait. You can't do this, these are lies. She's crazy. But the bailiff was already on him. As he was led out, he yelled over his shoulder. You'll regret this. Both of you. No one answered. Over the next few months, everything unraveled. Trevor was charged with multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and wire fraud. The state pressed charges for grant misuse. The IRS opened an audit. His accounts were frozen. His business collapsed. People he once bragged to now crossed the street to avoid him. Celeste filed for divorce 2 weeks after the hearing. She moved back into a small apartment in Burbank. She asked me if I'd be willing to be part of Lucas's life again. I said yes. But I made it clear, things would be different now. We started slowly. Dinner once a week. Then weekend visits. Lucas was older now. He understood more than they thought. He asked hard questions. Why did Daddy say you were sick? Why did you go away? I didn't lie. I told him. Sometimes adults make bad choices. But I never stopped loving you. He nodded. then hugged me. Celeste and I went to therapy. I won't lie, there were days I wanted to scream at her. Days I remembered how fast she believed him. But healing isn't perfect. It's not clean. She owned what she did. That mattered. Trevor took a plea deal. 8 years in prison, no parole for 4. His accounts were drained to pay restitution. Celeste kept none of it. He tried to write Lucas from prison. Celeste returned every letter unopened. People in town started talking again, but this time, in a different way. Neighbors who once avoided me now apologized. Church ladies started sitting next to me again. One woman even said, "I never should have believed what they said. I'm so sorry. I didn't need their pity. But I accepted their shame. Because I knew what it felt like to be erased. And I had come back from it. Today, Lucas is 10. He loves building things, Legos, puzzles, tree houses. He wants to be an engineer. He still calls me Nana. He still asks me to tuck him in when he sleeps over. Every time I look at him, I remember those years I spent being told I was nothing. That I was losing my mind. But now I know better. I wasn't crazy. I was right. And in the end, the truth wasn't just my revenge, it was my freedom.